So you should have in your pack a piece of white shrinkies paper or shrinky dinks or shrinkles, or I think it can be known by many names, and you'll find that you've got one side which is very smooth and very shiny, and the other side is slightly matte and has a bit of texture. So we're going to be using this matte texture side. It works a bit better if you're colouring with pencils, but you could use either side, you're not restricted with it. So I'm going to pop this into my platform, make sure I've got the non-shiny side up, and then I'm going to really make sure that I've got this pushed right into the corner, because this paper probably will move because the ink's quite sticky. So I'm putting on my magnets of doom, and then from my stamp set I'm going to take the cookie sentiment and the You're My Favourite sentiment. Now I've got to get quite a few stamps into this, so I'm going to be a little bit cautious with my space and try and get enough shrinkies out of this to use on both my cards. So I'm going to line up my sentiments from the stamp set, and then I'm also going to try and get in a Hugs and Kisses, which I'm going to put here. So I'm going to hopefully be able to get another You're My Favourite cookie out of this top bit. But remember, when we're using shrinkies, we want to leave quite a decent white edge around the stamp. So as you'll see, layout is important to get as many as possible out of this one piece. So I'm just going to close my platform to pick up the stamps, make sure that my shrinkies is still well tucked into the corner, and then I'm going to use black StazOn or StazOn to ink up my stamps, because it seems to work best with shrinky plastic. So I'm going to use black StazOn, but I think it would be quite cool to do it in another colour, brown particularly for the cookie, or if you've got some nice bright colours you could do the fonts in any colour, the sentiments in any colour. So I'm just going to ink up my stamps. They stamped fine first time for me, I didn't have to do any prep on them. Them inked up, and then I'm going to stamp, try and do even pressure all over and lift. You can see what I mean about it sticking to the stamps. So what do we think? They look pretty good, so I'm going to leave them like that and not tempt fate by fiddling around. And then I'm going to use my cleaner to just clean them off, clean my stamps off once. So I'm using StazOn cleaner, quick clean all over. Then I've got a rag I normally use for this, but I just use a wet wipe for now since it's fast. Okay, so we're going to do the same again, also being economical with our piece of Shrinky Dink. And so again we're going to, I suppose I could flip it. Shall I flip it? That's a good idea, I'm going to do that. So I'm going to flip it around, still making sure it's in the corner. I didn't do it this way around last time because I was a dunce, clearly. Right, okay. Then I'm going to ink up my stamps again. Quite, being quite serious about my layer of ink, because ideally I don't want to have to do it twice. And close on platform, press, and open. Not sticky that time. You can see that I've got a bit of a build up of ink, so I'm going to have to let that dry properly. Then I'm going to StazOn. Do you say StazOn or do you say StazOn? Not without my top on, that wouldn't have worked well, would it? What a div. Right, there we go. So I'm going to just wipe that off so we don't get inky mess. And then we're going to get our cookie stamp from our stamp set. So I should be able to get one here and one here. Fingers crossed. So we're going to make sure once again that our stamp is in the corner, just in case we have to restamp. I'm going to pop that there. I'm going to take these two off here. Put them back on the stamp set. So I'm just going to pick up my stamp, Make sure I'm still tucked in the corner properly. Look it up. Stamp. And off. And flip in the hope that that works. I might actually just dab off that bit of excess ink. That's quite hard to say. Oh, that makes it a little bit smudged, but better than a big smudge. And then ink on my stamp again. Probably need to move my magnet a little bit. Move that up a little bit. Restamp. And that's all our stamping and shrinkies for the 2 cards for making charms. Job done. Gonna have to wait and let that dry now. And try not to smudge it until then. Okay, so what I've done is I've cut up my shrinkies so they're now in parts, so I can't smudge one bit while I'm working on another bit, that kind of thing. So I'm just going to put my sentiment pieces off to one side. Then I'm going to take a little bit of tape to hold down my 2 cookies. So there's going to be 1 cookie charm for 1 card, 1 for the other, but we may as well do them both now. Be economical. Then I've got 4 pencils out from my polychroma set: white, 177 walnut brown, burnt ochre, and the dark yellow, which is dark chrome yellow. And I'm just going to colour these chaps in. So remember that the colour will be concentrated once you shrunk them, so go for much lighter than you'd normally do. So I'm going to use my 177 and I'm just going to gently go around the edge of my cookie. So I'm just doing a little bit of shade. There's no point doing an excessive amount of colouring here, or spending ages blending, or going for nuanced textures, because when it shrinks none of that's going to be visible. You do need slightly better quality colouring than just scribble, but not far off. So I'm just going to go all the way around in my 177 on both cookies, quickly, all the way around. Go. Then I'm going to swap to my burnt ochre, sort of blend that in a little bit. If you're getting major smudging off your ink, you probably just need to let it dry a little bit longer. Obviously you can't use your heating tool to dry it out. I did actually have to think about that for a bit, because I'm on a bit of a div day. So and then I'm just going to pop a little bit around my chips. There's nothing that says that you have to do a brown cookie and chocolate chips. You can do whatever you want. So it is more identifiable as a cookie if you colour it in conventional colours. But that's my only criteria for this choice. And then I'm going to swap over to my dark yellow and do the middle yellow. Just need to smooth that off a bit. So I've done just a gradual fade between the colours, and it looks pretty pale. And swap to yellow and do the other side. Make sure it's not too scribbly. And that looks alright. Then I'm going to go in 177 for my chocolate chips. I'm going to go a little bit darker with my colouring and try and leave some tiny white bits so it looks like the chocolate is shining. However, I don't know, it doesn't always show up perfectly, but you might want to add a little bit with your white, see how that goes. Just going to try it a little bit on that one. Let's pop to the other one and do the same here. So you could do this on transparent shrinkies as well if that's what you've got. These would probably quite do shrink these and make these into earrings, would be quite cool as well. Okay, so my next job will be take off my tape, and I'm now going to cut these out from the view of shrinking them down. So what I'm going to do is, I would say you can use the cutter on these and that cuts out fine, and it cuts very close to that black line, but I'm going to leave myself a bit more edge, so I'm going to use scissors to cut them out. And I'm just going to try and do just a smooth cut around the outside. All the way around. That's one done. Next one. All the way around. The two cookies cut out. And then on these two, what I need to do is, remember, I need a bit of a space to actually pop a hole in so we can actually put them onto the jewellery. So we're going to add a little bit of a area for hole at that end of both stamps. So I'm going to cut kind of straight across, so making a tag shape. There's no reason why you couldn't use a die to cut out your tag shape. And do hugs and kisses. Same again, bit of a tag shape. Let's make sure that's a bit rounded off. So I'm going to do that twice. Trying to leave a white edge all the way around. So obviously you could do this with absolutely anything. You could do it with the actual character stamps. You could change and use one of the other sentiments. You could do a whole load of cookies and do almost like a charm bracelet, or Shrinky Dinks is pretty cool technology really. I kind of forget that I've got it sometimes. Okay, so next thing we do is make our holes. I've got my very ye olde crocodile for doing that. I'm going to use it on the biggest hole setting, because actually when it shrinks that's not actually a very big hole. So I'm just going to pop in my holes. So you need to get it close enough to the edge, this little thread, onto a jump ring, but not so close that it will snap or break. So a couple of millimeters is fine. So I'm going to do the same in the cookies, but I'm actually going to go over the cookie a little bit. And in the pattern you've sort of got a bit of a gap in two places. I'm going to use one of those places to pop my hole in. Crocodile punches through this fine. It's actually kind of brittle, but seems to be able to punch holes in it no problem. Okay, and then I'm ready to shrink dink those right down. So I've got my heat tool, I've got my area prepped. So in front of me is my heat-proof mat, which is actually exactly the same stuff that you can buy to put in the bottom of your cooker to keep your cooker clean, and is significantly cheaper than a proper craft heated mat. And then underneath that I've also got quite a thick piece of cardboard, because if you heat up your cutting surface underneath, it warps it. So we're just protecting our surface underneath from warpage by having a couple of layers for our heating tool. Right, so I've just zoomed in a bit so you can see what's going on. I've got with me some very long tweezers so I don't burn myself and so I can hold the plastic while it's doing its thing. I've got my heat tool set up, and then I've also got with me an acrylic block for pressing down on the shrinky when it's finished shrinking so you can keep it flat. You could use a bigger acrylic block if you wanted, but actually they're going to shrink smaller than this. Okay, so here goes. There we go, charms made. So the next part of the process is to make our charms. We're going to make one for each card. You don't have to add the little charm cord. It's just so you could, use it for another use after you've done with the card. Just something cute to attach really, or you can just use them like charms. So what you've got in your kit is you've got one large jump ring and 4 small jump rings per cord. So the first thing you want to do is open up this jump ring. So I'm going to use 2 pairs of smooth pliers. So pliers have normally got like a rough bit in them here. Well, on jewellery pliers they don't have that bit. If you've only got normal pliers, it's fine, you can just work around it. You have to be a bit more careful that you don't mark the metal with the crenellated bit. So I'm going to open this jump ring by holding the pliers tightly on one side, and then you can just with your hand you can open the jump ring, so it's now open. And onto there I'm going to first of all thread my charm cord. Job 1. Pop that down. Then on each of my charms that we've just made I'm going to pop on a jump ring per charm. So take the jump ring in your pliers and either, as I've just done, hold the one side in the pliers and then bend it using your thumb, or if you haven't got very strong hands you can bend it using another set of pliers. So we've now got a big dip in it that you can attach things to. So what you want to do is open the ring and then view the ring from above. So let me hold that. So you can see that these are the 2 ends of the jump ring that I've just bent apart. So what you want to do is make them now slightly overlap. So by squeezing either side and a little bit in, you're actually almost pushing them slightly past each other. And that will now form a much tighter bond when we squeeze them back together again. So onto this one I'm going to put my You're My Favourite cookie charm. I'm going to thread that one on. Then with my pliers I'm going to squeeze these back together. So holding the charm in my hand, both bits of metal are now upright. I'm going to squeeze from one side and the other for them to be together. And you actually find that they don't quite go together because we move them past each other. So we're going to just squeeze them next to each other now. I'm going to use my 2 pliers for this, but you can use your hand. I'm going to squeeze them up next to each other, so now it's like a tight ring with no gap in between. So that one is done. Okay, now moving on to the Hugs and Kisses charm. So I'm going to take my jump ring, I'm going to hold half of it in my pliers, and then I'm going to bend it one way so the jump ring opens. Then I'm going to slide on my Hugs and Kisses, and then holding the charm, leaving the open side of the ring upwards, I'm going to place my pliers round them and squeeze them just a little bit together so they overlap. Then I'm going to put them this way and I'm going to squeeze the two sides together. That's going to form a nice bond. If they're not quite level, swap to using the two pliers again and make sure they marry up. Nice tight bond. That done. Okay, next on to our cookie. So we're going to take the jump ring, get half of it in our pliers, with the other pliers or your hand, open it up, and we're going to pop our cookie onto that. Then holding the charm, we need the open hole of the ring upwards. We're going to take our pliers and just slightly squeeze them together so they go past each other. And then from the side, we're going to squeeze them together. It should be a click if you've done it great. You slightly overlapped, no problem with just holding one bit in the pliers, the other end, and making sure they're married up nicely to form a pretty solid ring. Okay, so that's our 3 charms done, and then I've done exactly the same with my little bell, and I'm going to take my, actually I might swap it onto the blue cord. I don't know what colour cords you may have in your pack. So on my blue cord, I'm going to thread on my blue cord, and then sew all your charms are the same way round. Hold the charm facing you in your hand with the ring hanging down, and then put that onto the ring. So do the same again, charm facing you, ring hanging down and onto the ring, cookie the same, and then I can add my bell. And then depending on whether you've got charms or you're into beads, or what kind of things you like, you could maybe add a little charm to it, or perhaps thread up some beads and add some beads to it as well, make it as fancy as you like. So I thought perhaps I could do a red bead with my more red Elmo themed one if I was doing that. So I'm just going to hold the large jump ring now in my pliers. I think I'm going to add this little star. That seems cute, like a cute addition, or not, if it's going to fall straight off again. Pop on a little star. So then, just as we did before, hold all the charms and all the gubbins in one hand with the ring above, so we can see the two ends of the ring. Let's see if I can make that a little bit more obvious. There's the two ends of the ring. So we're going to just squeeze them together slightly so they overlap. So it's a bit more difficult because we've got so much gubbins going on now on the actual ring. So we're squeezing together just slightly so they overlap. Then we're going to squeeze them together. So now on this side, squeeze them together. And that's a bit of a click there. That means it's going to work great. So we clip them together. Then you can see they're meeting, but just not quite clipping together. So I'm just going to take either side in my pliers and just squidge that across. There we go. There you go. Nice, neat circle. And there we have our little bundle of charms that we're going to add to our card themed with our stamps. I think the cookies look super cute. They would make really nice earrings, wouldn't they? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do exactly the same thing again, but with all my red bits and pieces, and I'm going to make another one for the other card as well, using the same things the same way.